नमस्ते। आप सभी का आज के इस इंडियन फेमिनिज्म कोर्स के सेशन में आप सभी का स्वागत है। आज हम उत्सुक है सुनने के लिए डॉक्टर आशिता को थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म। आप सबको मालूम ही है कि ये इंडियन फेमिनिज्म सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स भारतीय स्त्री शक्ति और BRAUSS बाबा साहेब आम्बेडकर यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ सोशल साइंसेस, हेरिटेज सोसाइटी पटना, इन तीनों के कोलैबोरेशन से अभी हम इस कोर्स में पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं। और आप सब उपस्थित रहते ही हैं। आप हमें खुशी है कि आप ज्यादा से ज्यादा संख्या में उपस्थित रहे और हमारे जो एमिनेंट स्पीकर्स हैं उनके साथ इंटरैक्ट करने का अवसर प्राप्त करें। और किसी कारणवश अगर आप ज्वाइन न हो सके तो वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग्स अवेलेबल है ही। और हमें खेद है, हम क्षमा चाहते हैं कि कुछ तकनीकी कारण की वजह से कल का रिकॉर्डिंग पिछले हफ्ते का रिकॉर्डिंग अभी तक हमें उपलब्ध नहीं हुआ है। जैसे ही वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगा हम आपको वो रिकॉर्डिंग जल्द से जल्दी हम अवेलेबल करेंगे। तो आज हम जानते हैं आशिता जी के बारे में। Dr. Ashita, she is assistant professor of in Center for Women's Studies, and she joined Pondicherry University in 2011. डॉक्टर आशिता जी ने अंडर ग्रेजुएट, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट, PhD बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी से, वाराणसी से, उत्तर प्रदेश से किया हुआ है। और हम सब जानते हैं डॉक्टर प्रोफेसर चंद्रकला पाड़िया जी, वो उनकी एमिनेंट गाइड भी है। उनका PhD का विषय है कंटेम्पररी डिस्कोर्स ऑन थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म, अ क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस। उनको विमेन्स स्टडीज, ब्लैक फेमिनिज्म ऐसे विषयों में रुचि है और उन्होंने बहुत सारे कोर्सेज को पढ़ा है, जैसे कि विमेन्स स्टडीज, फेमिनिस्ट थ्योरी, विमेन एंड वर्क एंड एंशिएंट इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट्स ऐसे। और उनको और डॉक्टर आशिता जी को 3 बार बेस्ट टीचर अवार्ड मिल चुका है और बहुत सारे सेमिनार्स में उन्होंने पार्टिसिपेट किया हुआ है। एंड शी हैज आल्सो पब्लिश्ड 6 रिसर्च पेपर्स। उसके साथ साथ उन्होंने विमेन एंड वर्क ये बुक भी को एडिट किया हुआ है। और ये विमेन स्टडी के साथ स्पेनिश और इटालियन लैंग्वेजेस में डिप्लोमा भी किया हुआ है और वो चित्र विशारद भी है और संगीत विशारद भी है। तो ऐसे आज की हमारी एमिनेंट स्कॉलर कि जो हमें आज थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म पे हमें सेशन लेने वाली है, मैं उनका स्वागत करती हूँ और उनको मैं रिक्वेस्ट करती हूँ कि वो आपका सेशन प्रारंभ करें। ओवर टू यू डॉक्टर आशिता जी।
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your sweet words. I hope I'll do justice with the topic which is given to me.
Definitely.
Okay, so let me just start. Ma'am, please let me know if you can see the next slide.
Yeah, you can move ahead and let me know if you have any problem.
Can you see, ma'am, the second slide?
Just I could see the title. Is that okay? Yeah. This is the first slide now.
Yeah.
And second slide. No, you are again back to first slide.
Yeah, I'm just checking. So
sure,
I hope.
Sure.
Fine, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah.
So very good evening to everyone. The topic given to me for today's presentation is third world feminism, and as was told to me by now, you have already got to know many things about different aspects of feminism and different types of feminism, I guess. So in that regard, third world feminism also has an important place because if we talk of Indian feminism, right, so that somehow comes under the umbrella term, which is third world or third world feminism. And so if we say third world feminism, we have 2 terms here, third world and feminism. So what is feminism? I suppose, each one of us has some ideas about what feminism actually constitutes. Now, coming to this use of the word third world, so does it mean that we have different worlds? And if we say third world, does it mean that we already have a second world and a first world? Okay, so, you know, ideologically we can say yes, right? So we can't as such geographically, such a straightforward division of the world is somehow not possible, but ideologically still exists at least two worlds, first world and the third world. Now, the third world is also referred to as developing world, global south, low income countries, middle income countries, underdeveloped countries, etc. So the point is that can we use these terms as an alternative to the word third world? So I believe we can use, because most of the third world countries are found to be the developing countries, are believed to be falling, geographically. If you look at the globe, most of them come or fall under the, the southern part of the globe, and they definitely are the middle income countries or low income countries. Now, when we label anything, it's not only about a world, it's not only about a person, but then if we label anything, there will be various connotations of it. And in case of third world, applying the label of third world, so as it turns out, it has an interesting story as to from where did actually the term third world come into existence, right? So moving ahead, it all goes back to, the story goes back to the Cold War, we can say like that. Now, Cold War eventually was a period in socio-political, a context, or it was a historical period in historical period where when we see that there were two major groups which were positioned against each other, which were situated against each other, not so much geographically, but then definitely ideologically. Now, one of the groups was led by the US, the other one was led by the former USSR, and the countries which sided with the United States, they were countries which favored capitalism, and the countries which were with the USSR, they favored socialism. So we can see that there was this division of, Western capitalism and Soviet socialism. So there were many countries which joined either of these two blocks. So one block led by the US, the other block led by the USSR. Now, there were many other countries, apart from those countries which joined these two groups, there were many other countries which did not join either of these two groups. Okay. And basically, these were the countries which were former colonies of the imperial powers, the capitalist powers. So those countries were, those countries which did not join either of the Western Bloc or the Eastern Bloc led by the Soviet Union, the USSR, they came to be called as the third world countries. And none of them were completely in either the Western or the Soviet camp or the Soviet bloc. Now, thinking of these three types of divisions or three factions, French demographer Alfred Sauvé wrote of three worlds, one planet, in one of the articles published in L'Observateur in 1952. I may be wrong with my French pronunciation, right? So this is considered to be one major academic article which talked of the third world, okay, which talked of the three worlds: first world, second world, and the third world. So I hope it is clear that first world was the world of Western capitalism led by the US. The second world came to be known as the countries which sided with the USSR, and rest of the countries which did not side with either of these two blocks were labeled as the third world countries, right? And according to historian B.R. Tomlinson, in the What Was the Third World, published in 2003 in the Journal of Contemporary History, he goes on to say that although the phrase was widely used, it was never clear whether it was a clear category of analysis or simply a convenient and rather vague label for an imprecise collection of states in the second half of the 20th century and some of the common problems that they faced. So, although third world came to be used widely as a term, but then with the disintegration of the USSR, I hope it is known that the USSR disintegrated by the year 1991, and the Soviet, the bloc led by the USSR, it ceased to exist. Now, with the disintegration of the USSR, the question was posed that whether we should continue using terms or labels like the first world and the third world, because now there is no existence of the second world. The USSR already disintegrated. So where is the second world? So should we still continue using terms like the first world and the third world? So there, it is still quite a debatable issue as to whether we should go on using terms like this or not. But then academically, there are many scholars who believe that it's fine because still the third world comes to be identified with all those features with which it was identified way back during the times of the Cold War. And just to make it a little more clear, first world, second world, and third world, and basically what characteristics would comprise of these three different worlds. So, first world countries were basically the democratic countries. They are still the democratic countries, developed in the sense of technology, industries, modernization, etc. They have high technology, right? Presence of high technology. They have the presence of modern machinery, hard currency, and somehow it is in a position to control capital development as well as capital flow, right? So money will flow from where to where, etc., etc. Second world countries were basically socialist or communist countries. They were also developed, but not as developed technologically as the first world countries. They had education. It's not that they were not, they can't be called as educated countries or developed countries, but then they did not have that much potential to develop as was found in the first world countries. They had access to hard currency, but limited access, or very limited access to hard currency, or no access. Limited capacity for modern machinery, limited capacity for modern technology, and that described the second world countries in general. Coming to the third world countries were basically the former colonies of imperial powers. They were poor, they were so-called quote unquote backward in machinery, in technology. They were developing, they were labeled as developing countries, or they were labeled as underdeveloped countries. They were overpopulated. There was the presence of rural and urban poverty, or the rural and urban divide was too stark there, or is too stark there. So these basically tell us about the three worlds: the first world, the second world, and the third world. Jyoti madam, am I audible and is my slide visible? Because
Yes, everything
I'm on
is
this,
clear. Yeah.
slideshow mode, so I cannot see. Okay, madam, thank you.
No, everything is clear. Just one request, आशिता जी, आप अगर हिंदी का भी बीच बीच में थोड़ा उपयोग करेंगे तो अच्छा रहेगा, क्योंकि हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट दोनों लैंग्वेज चाहते हैं, इंग्लिश प्लस हिंदी. So the way you are comfortable, you can have mixed language.
ठीक है मैम.
Okay, thanks a lot.
So this is a simple image of what could represent the first world, second world, and third world, right? I hope ये आप लोग सबको clear है. और नीचे जैसा कि आप देख सकते हैं, बीच में नीचे लिखा है फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड, और फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड के बाद लिखा है साइडेड विथ यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, एंड दे वर मोस्टली डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रीज, इंडस्ट्रियलाइज्ड कंट्रीज. और जो सेकेंड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज थी वो यूएसएसआर के साथ थी, जैसा कि ऑलरेडी अभी कहा, और दे वर मोस्टली सोशलिस्ट कंट्रीज और कम्युनिस्ट कंट्रीज. और द थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज थी उन्होंने किसी भी इन दोनों ब्लॉक के साथ साइड नहीं किया, किसी का भी फेवर नहीं किया, एंड दे बेसिकली केम टू बी द नॉन अलाइंड कंट्रीज और न्यूट्रल एक्स कॉलोनीज. फाइन. सो ये जो 3 कलर्स हैं, ब्लू, रेड और येलो, ये 3 वर्ड्स को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, मोर और लेस. थोड़े बहुत डिफरेंसेस हैं, बट देन मोर और लेस इट रिप्रेजेंट्स द ब्लू कलर जो है वो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज को रिप्रेजेंट करता है, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज को रेड कलर, और जो येलो पार्ट है एज यू कैन सी एशिया, अफ्रीका, लैटिन अमेरिका, इंडिया भी आता है उसमें. तो ये सब थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज में आते हैं, इंडिया थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्री में आता है. तो इस तरीके का डिवीजन जो है वो सही है या नहीं है, इसके बारे में बहुत सारे स्कॉलर्स ने अपनी बात रखी है, क्योंकि बहुतों को लगता है कि इस तरीके से डिवाइड करना सही नहीं है, स्पेशली जब वी डोंट हैव द सेकंड ब्लॉक, द सेकंड वर्ल्ड लेड बाय द यूएसएसआर. हाउएवर बहुत सारे दूसरे स्कॉलर्स हैं जिनका कहना है कि हम अभी भी ये टर्म्स यूज कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड स्टिल इज डोमिनेटेड बाय डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रीज. वहाँ पे टेक्नोलॉजी अभी भी बहुत हाई टेक्नोलॉजी है, मॉडर्न मशीनरीज है, हाई लेवल ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन है. तो इट इज फाइन कि एकेडमिक डिस्कोर्सेज में हम ऐसे टर्म्स यूज करते रहें, तो उसमें ऐसी बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. एनीवे, बात ये है कि डिवीजन, ऐसा जो डिवीजन है 3 तरीके का, तो ये कंफ्यूजिंग हो सकता है, इंसल्टिंग भी हो सकता है, बिकॉज यू आर लेबलिंग वन ग्रुप ऑफ कंट्रीज एज थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज, राइट? तो थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज के लिए ये इंसल्टिंग हो सकता है. और सबसे बड़ी बात कि ये आउट ऑफ डेट इसलिए है क्योंकि यूएसएसआर अब कोलैप्स हो चुका है. बट स्टिल आज भी एकेडमिक डिस्कोर्सेज में थियरिस्ट्स और स्कॉलर्स के द्वारा फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड, थर्ड वर्ल्ड टर्म्स का यूज किया जा रहा है. नाउ अब बात आती है कि ये फर्स्ट, सेकेंड और थर्ड वर्ल्ड, या फर्स्ट, सेकेंड और थर्ड लेबल्स डिसाइड करने वाले कौन से लोग हैं, कौन कौन डिफाइन करता है कि इस ग्रुप को या इस कंट्री को फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड कहना है, दूसरे को सेकेंड कहना है, तीसरे को थर्ड कहना है. तो हु गेट्स द पावर टू डिफाइन विच पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड इज फर्स्ट एंड विच इज नॉट? सो आंसर यही है कि जो पावरफुल होंगे वही डिसाइड करेंगे, राइट? पावरफुल जो होगा वही डिसाइड करेगा कि उसको अपने आप को फर्स्ट कहना है, कि एलीट कहना है, कि सेकंड कहना है, और किसको सेकंड कहना है, किसको थर्ड, किसको लास्ट कहना है. तो हमेशा जो पावरफुल है, दे आर द वंस हु आर दे आर द वंस हु डिसाइड even the terminologies. They are the ones who decide they decide the ideological frameworks to be used for different places, for different categories of individuals, for different sexes. For example, एक simple सा example यहाँ पे एक corollary के जैसा ये होगा कि आपने सुना होगा ये थर्ड जेंडर, राइट? तो फर्स्ट जेंडर कौन है, सेकंड जेंडर कौन है, थर्ड जेंडर कौन है, और किसने ऐसे शब्दों को डिफाइन किया या फिर ऐसे लेबल्स को यूज करना शुरू किया. और हम सिमोन दी बुआ की एक किताब है. सिमोन दी बुआ एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट नाम है फेमिनिस्ट फिलोसफी में, फेमिनिज्म में. शी वॉज अ फ्रेंच फेमिनिस्ट, एंड उन्होंने अपनी बहुत ही फेमस किताब लिखी जिसका नाम है द सेकंड सेक्स. तो अनलेस एंड अनटिल कोई अपने आप को फर्स्ट नहीं घोषित करता है, तब तक हम किसी और को सेकंड नहीं कह सकते हैं, राइट? तो men have always been in power, men have always been in authority, they have always enjoyed the authority much more than any other category of individuals in the society. So they went on to call themselves as the first sex, right? And therefore first के बाद second आता है, तो that place somehow went to the women. I'm just trying to explain as to how terms and terminologies, ideologies especially, are created by the rich, by the powerful, by the people in authority. तो ऐसे ही फर्स्ट, सेकेंड और थर्ड वर्ल्ड जो लेबल्स हैं उनके साथ भी यही जाता है कि वो किसको किसको ये पावर मिली है डिफाइन करने के लिए कि ये फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड है या सेकंड वर्ल्ड है या थर्ड वर्ल्ड है, तो डेफिनेटली वो पावर जो है वो जो मोस्ट पावरफुल ग्रुप ऑफ कंट्रीज हैं या मोस्ट पावरफुल ग्रुप ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स हैं उनको जाती है इन डिफरेंट केसेस. सो थर्ड जेंडर को थर्ड जेंडर क्यों कहना, व्हाई कांट दे बी कॉल्ड एज फर्स्ट जेंडर, राइट? ये एक क्वेश्चन हो सकता है. ओके, तो दो हेट्रोसेक्सुअल पीपल होते हैं, दे कॉल देमसेल्व्स एज स्ट्रेट, और जो हेट्रोसेक्सुअल नहीं होते हैं तो उनके लिए दे हैव डिफरेंट टर्मिनोलॉजीज. So how is it that they are able to call themselves as straight? Just, and that happens because they know that they have the power and authority to decide things. They have the power and authority to label things as well. So moving forward, the third world has been described as the underdeveloped or developing countries of basically Africa, Asia, Latin America, especially those not allied with the communist or anti-communist bloc. So what is the third world? What is this third world? Kumkum Sangri is an important, scholar in this regard, a feminist scholar. She goes on to say that the term third world not only designates specific geographical areas, but imaginary spaces. तो बस ये ज्योग्राफी डिवाइडेड ज्योग्राफी तक ही सीमित नहीं है, बट दे गो ऑन टू एग्जिस्ट इन आवर माइंड्स, इन आवर इमेजिनेशन. तो थर्ड वर्ल्ड ऐसा नहीं है कि हाँ ग्लोब का या वर्ल्ड का एक पार्ट वो डिवाइड कर दो ज्योग्राफिकली एंड दैट कम्स टू बी नोन एज द थर्ड वर्ल्ड. बट देन ये एक इमेजिनरी स्पेस भी है, द टर्म थर्ड वर्ल्ड, क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं है कि सारे थर्ड वर्ल्ड एक ही स्पेस में, ज्योग्राफिकल स्पेस में आते हैं, या सारे के सारे थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट्स जो हैं वो उसी स्पेस में रहते हैं. नहीं, दे आर टू बी फाउंड इन ऑल regions of the world, all countries of the world. So she says that third world is a term that both signifies and blurs the functioning of an economic, political, and imaginary geography able to unite vast and vastly differentiated areas of the world into a single underdeveloped terrain. And she is very critical of the way third world is used by the West to indiscriminately lump together vastly different places. So in a nutshell, Kumkum Sangari tries to say is that थर्ड वर्ल्ड जो टर्म हम यूज करते हैं वो वेस्ट के द्वारा बहुत ही गलत तरीके से यूज किया गया है, इन द सेंस दैट according to the Western scholars, third world means just some groups of countries which are placed geographically in one part of the world. And she is very critical of the way by which the West indiscriminately, without any without any justifiable discriminations, lumps together vastly different places and calls it the third world. I would like to know if I'm clear by now or not, till now or not, madam and everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, all of you please respond to madam.
Clear. Very well taken.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just move ahead. Another important name which with which third world feminism is known, or better to say it got new meanings, is Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. So she explains that the term third world was initially coined in the year 1955, especially by those people, by those emerging from the old world order. So that old world order was the world order wherein we had three different worlds: first, second, and third. And then, and I have just quoted her because I found it to be important. She says that the initial attempt in the Bantam Conference of 1955 to establish a third way, neither with the Eastern nor within the Western bloc, in the world system, in response to the seemingly new world order established after the Second World War, was not accompanied by a commensurate intellectual effort. The only idioms deployed for the nurturing of this nascent third world in the cultural field belonged then to positions emerging from resistance within the supposedly old world order, which was that of anti-imperialism and or nationalism. So I know it's a little long, but I found it to be important to be brought in here. So this is how Gayatri Spivak tries to explain the concept of the third world as to how it actually, or initially got a meaning, especially in the context of this conference. And this Bandung conference, it was a conference basically of the Asian and the African countries, and most of these countries were by that time they were independent countries, and it took place in the year 1955. And this conference attempted to give a new meaning to the term or to the label third world, right? So they wanted all these countries to align neither with the West nor with the East, right? Now, another important name is that of Chandra Talpade Mohanty, who defines the third world geographically. And she says that the nation states of Latin America, the Caribbean, Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, China, South Africa, and Oceania constitute the parameters of the non-European third world. Non-European third world. In addition, Black, Latino, Asian, and indigenous peoples in the US, Europe, Australia, some of whom have historic links with the geographically defined third worlds, also define themselves as third world peoples. So it's not that, to be called as a third world person, you have to be geographically situated in the third world. For example, India comes in under the third world countries, under the third world level. Now, suppose I shift my base to the US or any of the European countries for that matter. Okay, that will not, if I still choose to call myself as a third world woman, I will, I should have the right to call myself that. So what she's trying to say is that although these different nation states of Latin America, Africa, Asia, Caribbean, etc., they constitute the non-European parameters of the third world, but then in addition to this, to that, even the Asian people, the African people who are staying in Africa or America, or in America or other European countries, and many of whom have historical links with the geographically defined third worlds, they also define themselves as third world people. So we need not be in one geographically defined territory to call ourselves as a person belonging to this world or that world, right? In this case, it is the third world. So now the important question arises कि third world woman क्या है? तो तीसरी दुनिया की स्त्री क्या है? उसको कैसे डिफाइन करना है? और उससे रिलेटेड एक और क्वेश्चन है कि तीसरी दुनिया का नारीवाद क्या है? व्हाट इज दिस थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म व्हिच वी आर ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो हु इज अ थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमन and what is third world feminism? We'll just try to understand. So if we place third world women in the center, the bigger center, I hope you can see, ये जो बड़ा सर्कल है उसके अंदर अगर हम एक तीसरी दुनिया की स्त्री को रखते हैं, तो वो कौन कौन से कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर्स होंगे जो थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को डिफाइन करेंगे? तो जैसा कि, और ये सब फीचर्स हैं, लेट मी टेल यू कि ये फीचर्स वेस्ट डिफाइंड फीचर्स हैं. इसको वेस्टर्न स्कॉलर्स, वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट्स ने इस तरीके से थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को डिफाइन किया है. प्लीज डू नॉट मिस्टेक इट कि मैं ये कहना चाह रही हूँ कि ये सारे फीचर्स थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के हैं. मैं या आप जो कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन है, हमारे अंदर या हम इन फीचर्स से डिफाइन किए जाएंगे. नहीं, ये जो भी ये चार छोटे सर्कल्स के अंदर जो भी फीचर्स मैंने लिखे हैं, ये वो फीचर्स हैं, ये वो पैरामीटर्स हैं जिनके बेसिस पे एक वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट, एक वेस्टर्न वुमेन और वेस्टर्न स्कॉलर्स इन जनरल, दे गो ऑन टू डिफाइन अ थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन. तो वो सबसे पहले डिफाइन की जाती हैं कि दे आर डिपेंडेंट्स, राइट? दे आर यूनिवर्सल डिपेंडेंट्स. उनकी अपनी कोई एजेंसी नहीं है. दे आर नॉट, दे डोंट हैव एनी एजेंसी ऑफ देयर ओन. दे आर विक्टिम्स ऑफ ट्रेडिशन, राइट? आप अगर उमा नारायण और उमा चक्रवर्ती इन लोगों की किताब पढ़ेंगे तो it will be clear as to how the Western feminists have created the monolithic image of a third world woman, कि वो हमेशा ट्रेडिशन के उसमें फंसी रहती है, और मेल वायलेंस बहुत ज़्यादा है थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन की लाइफ में, एंड दे आर म्यूट इन द सेंस उनकी अपनी कोई एजेंसी नहीं है, वो अपनी बात रखने की आज़ादी नहीं है उनको, दे आर साइलेंट बीइंग्स, दे आर म्यूट बीइंग्स, उस सेंस में ये टर्म म्यूट यहाँ पे यूज किया गया है, और इलिटरेट कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन आर इलिटरेट. नाउ जब आप कहते हैं कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन आर इलिटरेट, यू आर एक्चुअली प्रोजेक्टिंग अ यूनिवर्सल आइडिया अबाउट थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन की सारी थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन ही इलिटरेट होती है, राइट? बट देन ऐसा ही हुआ है वेस्ट से आए हुए लिटरेचर में, और बहुत सारे वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट्स ने इस तरीके से तीसरी दुनिया की स्त्री को प्रोजेक्ट किया है लिटरेचर में या elsewhere. So they are characterized as illiterate, custom bound, कि वो हमेशा उनको एक नहीं तो दूसरा कोई ना कोई कस्टम बांधे रहता है, ट्रेडिशन में फंसी रहती है, इन नीड ऑफ हेल्प, कि उनको हर समय हेल्प की जरूरत है, उत्थान, कोई आए और उनका उत्थान करे, वो वाली बात. और मोनोलिथिक कैटेगरी की थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन में डिफरेंस नहीं है, राइट? कि की सारी थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन एक ही तरीके की होती है, उनकी अपनी कोई उनका अपना कोई वॉइस नहीं होता, उनकी अपनी कोई एजेंसी नहीं होती, और अल्टीमेटली दे आर लेस फेमिनिस्ट्स. और लेस फेमिनिस्ट इसलिए क्योंकि फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट, विच अभी थोड़ी देर बाद वी विल try to see as to what first world feminists want to what they have to say about themselves and about third world women, कि उनको लेस फेमिनिस्ट इसलिए कहा गया क्योंकि जिस तरीके से फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट या वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट अपनी बात को रखती आई हैं, और जिस तरीके से उन्होंने अपनी बातों को के लिए प्रोटेस्ट किया है, या उनके लिए जो इश्यूज हैं वो थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के लिए उतने इम्पोर्टेंट इश्यूज नहीं है, इसलिए उन्होंने थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को लेस फेमिनिस्ट कहना शुरू कर दिया, कि दे आर नॉट एज फेमिनिस्ट एज अस, दे आर लेस फेमिनिस्ट. व्हाई? बिकॉज दे डोंट शेयर आवर goals, they don't share our objectives. जो हमारे feminist objectives है वो third world women share नहीं करती है, and therefore they started calling third world women as less feminists. और इसका ये नतीजा हुआ कि the term third world women, the use of the term third world women by western feminists has been widely critiqued. कि जिस तरीके से वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को प्रोजेक्ट करती हैं, डिफाइन करती हैं, पोर्ट्रे करती हैं, दैट इज हाईली ऑब्जेक्शनेबल, एंड दैट लेड टू अ लॉट ऑफ क्रिटिसिज्म ऑन द पार्ट ऑफ वेरियस थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट्स. एंड द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ अ थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन एज अ colonial ऑब्जेक्ट, की जो थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन है, बिकॉज अभी जस्ट नाउ वी सॉ दैट थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज बेसिकली वो कंट्रीज है जो बहुत सालों तक किसी न किसी colonial imperial power के अंडर थे. They were colonies of some imperial powers. So the production of a third world woman as a colonial object is produced by the hegemonic first world intellectual practices. Okay, and the first world women assume that most third world women need help. तो ये एक बहुत ही स्टीरियोटिपिकल assumption है थर्ड वर्ल्ड women के बारे में, कि उनको हर समय हेल्प की जरूरत होती है. Okay, help in the sense of all kinds of help, emotional, right? Emotional, material, economical, financial, etc. So the first world women assume that most third world women need help. ये एक stereotypical assumption है, क्योंकि ऐसा है नहीं रियलिटी में. तो आई होप अभी तक के डिस्कशन से ये क्लियर है कि हमारे सामने दो टाइप की या तो कैटेगरीज की विमेन हैं जिनको समझना जरूरी है. सेकंड वर्ल्ड इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि सेकंड वर्ल्ड वुमेन इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि सेकंड वर्ल्ड अभी हमने देखा कि सेकंड वर्ल्ड कोलैप्स हो चुका है, तो normally discussion नहीं होता है. We just concentrate on first world women and third world women, or first world feminism and third world feminism. And as you can see, they are not complementary to each other, right? They are placed in opposition to each other. So एक इधर एक इस direction में and the second in some other direction. So they are always placed in opposition to each other. और ऐसा क्यों है? We will just try to understand. तो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वुमेन जो है वो मॉडर्न है, एडुकेटेड है, लिबरेटेड है, शी इज इन कंट्रोल ऑफ हर ओन लाइफ, शी इज इंडिपेंडेंट, शी इज एजेंटिव, मीनिंग कि उनके पास अपनी एजेंसी है, अपनी बात रखने की क्षमता है, या उनके पास वो सारे मीन्स हैं जिनके द्वारा वो अपने आप को असर्ट कर सकती हैं, एंड डेफिनेटली दे आर empowered. So this is the picture of a normal, a general first world woman, which is created by the first world women themselves. So please understand that it is not something which is, which is natural. So it's not that हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि सारी की सारी अमेरिकन women और सारी की सारी यूरोपियन women, they are all liberated, they are all empowered, they are all, educated. No. Why? Because women एक यूनिवर्सल कैटेगरी नहीं है. वी अंडरस्टैंड दैट. अभी इस क्लास में ही आई कैन से दैट there can be so many divisions based on which, or there can be so many factors based on which we can divide ourselves right here in this classroom. I cannot see how many people have joined, but then maybe अगर 25 भी हैं तो I can't say कि हम सारे के सारे 25 ना एक सोशियो कल्चरल हिस्टोरिकल बैकग्राउंड से आते हैं. We have the same level of education. We are liberated in the same degree, and we are all in control of our own lives in the same way. We can't say that, right? तो women as a category को यूनिवर्सलाइज करना ही थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के लिए सबसे प्रॉब्लमेटिक बात है. एनीवे, तो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वुमेन को ऐसे प्रोजेक्ट किया गया है, एंड थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन हैज बीन डिफाइंड एज इलिटरेट, डिपेंडेंट, विक्टिम ऑफ ट्रेडिशन और कस्टम, और पैसिव, एंड शी इज नॉट एम्पावर्ड. शी इज ऑलवेज इन नीड ऑफ सम काइंड ऑफ अ हेल्प, एंड दिस इज हाउ दिस बाइनरी हैज बीन क्रिएटेड. ये एक तरीके का बाइनरी है, डुअलिज्म है, जो कि फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वुमेन को थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के ऑपोजिशन में रखता है, या वाइस वर्सा. थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वुमेन की कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री नहीं होती, बट देन शी बिकम्स एन ऑपोजिशनल रियलिटी. ओके, क्लियर है? कैन आई मूव अहेड?
Very clear.
जी मैडम.
Thank you. If it is clear, so coming back to so I hope we have understood by now कि first world क्या है, second world, third world, and we also try to understand कि first world woman को कैसे define किया गया है. I will not say कि वो ऐसे defined होती है, but then it is a construct. ये construct किया गया है by the first world women themselves, कि उन्होंने थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को देखा कि वो गरीब है, वो लाचार है, वो मेल वायलेंस की शिकार है, सेक्सुअल वायलेंस की शिकार है, पढ़ी लिखी नहीं है, और तब उन्होंने ये एक आइडिया क्रिएट किया कि ओके, मैं मॉडर्न हूँ, मेरे पास एजुकेशन है, आई कैन कंट्रोल माई ओन सेक्सुअलिटी, आई कैन कंट्रोल माई ओन लाइफ, I can go for a divorce, etc., and therefore I am empowered. So the point is that जब तक कि ये सब आइडियोलॉजिकल कोलोनियलिज्म है, आई वुड से, बिकॉज जब तक कि आप एक ग्रुप को इंफीरियर नहीं साबित कर सकते हैं, आप अपने आप को सुपीरियर कभी नहीं साबित कर सकते. आई होप आप लोगों में से बहुत ने एक कॉन्सेप्ट कहीं पढ़ा होगा, व्हाइट मैन्स बर्डन. ना व्हाइट मैन्स बर्डन के नाम पे व्हाइट मैन ने क्या किया, आई होप दैट इज ऑल क्लियर टू अस. उसी के नाम पे इतना इंपीरियलिज्म और कोलोनियलिज्म हुआ कि उन्होंने वो एशिया आए, वो अफ्रीका आए, और उन्होंने देखा कि अरे यहाँ तो मशीन ही नहीं है, यहाँ तो इंडस्ट्री ही नहीं है, यहाँ तो लोग बिना चप्पल के घूमते हैं, यहाँ लोग कपड़े नहीं पहनते हैं. अफ्रीकन को उन्होंने अफ्रीका को उन्होंने डार्क कॉन्टिनेंट का नाम दे दिया कि अनसिविलाइज्ड है. तो अनलेस एंड अनटिल आप एक ग्रुप को जब तक अनसिविलाइज्ड साबित नहीं कर सकते, आप कभी भी अपने को सिविलाइज नहीं कर सकते. और द सेम गोज विथ कॉलिंग वन सेल्फ एज मॉडर्न और नॉट मॉडर्न और अनमॉडर्न, थिंग्स लाइक दैट. तो अनलेस एंड अनटिल आप मैस्कुलिनिटी को सुपीरियर वुमेन को इंफीरियर साबित नहीं करेंगे, आप अपने आप को सुपीरियर साबित नहीं कर पाएंगे. सो ऐसा ही फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वुमेन और थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हुआ. एनीवे, तो अब बात आती है कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म क्या है. बट उसके पहले आई थॉट एक दो स्लाइड में हम ये समझने की कोशिश करेंगे कि फेमिनिज्म क्या है, और फेमिनिज्म को भी क्या हम फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म, सेकेंड, थर्ड, या अदरवाइज और दूसरे तरीके से क्या हम डिफाइन कर सकते हैं. तो आंसर होगा कि हाँ, क्योंकि फेमिनिज्म अगेन इट्स एन अम्ब्रेला टर्म, एक बहुत बड़ा अम्ब्रेला है जिसके अंडर बहुत सारे सब वेराइटीज ऑफ फेमिनिस्ट फिलोसफीज आते हैं या फेमिनिस्ट थियरीज आते हैं. तो फेमिनिज्म in simple words, is one of the most humanist interventions in the field of social sciences. And let me tell you, because Jyoti madam mentioned Professor Chandrakala Padia's name, she has been not only my PhD guide, but then she taught me right from UG and PG. Okay, and this is one first sentence regarding feminism which I heard from her long time back, even before I joined feminism. और वो एक sentence मुझे आज तक याद है कि it is one of the most humanist interventions in the field of social sciences, right? क्योंकि फेमिनिज्म इज ऑल अबाउट इट्स नॉर्मली फेमिनिज्म के साथ एक नेगेटिव बैगेज अटैच्ड है. सोसाइटी इन जनरल समझती है कि इट इज समथिंग विच इज वुमेन सेंट्रिक, वो सिर्फ वुमेन की बात करता है ऐसा, जबकि ऐसा है नहीं. आई होप ऑल ऑफ अस अंडरस्टैंड. सो इट टॉक्स अबाउट ह्यूमैनिटी, टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ वन कैन बी ह्यूमन. तो फेमिनिज्म के बहुत सारे मतलब हैं. इट हैज मैनीफोल्ड कॉनोटेशंस, बहुत सारे इसके मतलब निकाले जा सकते हैं और निकाले गए हैं. यही रीजन है कि आज हम थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म पे बात कर रहे हैं. तो फेमिनिज्म इज नॉट अ मोनोलिथिक category to be understood. It is not something which is universal. और इसीलिए फेमिनिज्म का कोई एक डेफिनेशन नहीं हो सकता है जो कि हर टाइम हर प्लेस पे अप्लाई हो सके. देयर कैन नॉट बी वन सिंगल डेफिनेशन ऑफ फेमिनिज्म which can be applied to all women, all people, better to say people, all people at all places at all points of time. Why? Because feminism is context specific. तो हम इंडिया में है या हम साउथ एशिया में, थर्ड वर्ल्ड में है, कोई अफ्रीका में है, तो वहां का फेमिनिज्म हमारे फेमिनिज्म से डिफरेंट होगा और है, इनफैक्ट है. So feminism has been interpreted differently by different thinkers, different scholars, but feminism at its simplest, एक बहुत ही सिंपल मीनिंग या डेफिनेशन ऑफ फेमिनिज्म ये होगा कि ये एक तरीके का मूवमेंट है फॉर सोशल, पॉलिटिकल, इकोनॉमिक equality of the sexes. But then let me tell you, I did not mention it, but then it's not only, it cannot be just limited to social, political and economic equality, all types of equalities of the sexes. ना अगर आप पुराने डेफिनेशंस पढ़ेंगे तो आपको मिलेगा कि ऑफ बोथ द सेक्सेस, बट देन इट्स बेटर टू से ऑफ ऑल द सेक्सेस, राइट? And it strives to bring gender equity in society by revealing the historical reality that women have been subordinate to men since ages. So definitely it is for all genders, it is for all sexes, feminism I mean to say. But then it is also a philosophy, a movement, a concept which focuses on women. And why it is that feminism focuses a lot on women? That is because it believes, it understands, and it tries to reveal the historical reality that women जो हैं वो for ages they have been subordinates to men, either politically, economically, religiously, socially. So women have always occupied this a secondary status in all societies of the world. So patriarchy is something which doesn't exist only in South Asia or third world. No, it very much exists in almost all known societies of the world, in different degrees, in different forms. So feminism is neither pro-woman nor pro-man. It insists on the idea that everyone, including women, should be treated as human beings. तो आपको सबको human being के जैसा treat करना है. You can't treat somebody as your slave. You can't treat somebody as a secondary human being. Because, liberalism tells us that, humanism tells us that all human beings are born equal. So who gives you the right to treat the other person as a secondary individual or a second-rate person, right? And feminism definitely is an attempt to explain gender inequalities and set forth agendas for overcoming those inequalities. तो ये सबसे पहले gender inequalities को pinpoint करता है, सामने लाता है, मगर बस सामने नहीं लाता है, उसके बाद ये बहुत सारे एजेंडा सेट करता है कि कैसे वो इनइक्वालिटी से निकाला जाए सबको, स्पेशली women को, because women are the major victims of such gender inequalities. And there is no such universal definition of feminism which can be applied at all times and at all places. So there are various meanings of the term, single term feminism. And just a few characteristics: that feminism is women-centric, it is a cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach, क्योंकि बस ये एक डिसिप्लिन तक कंसंट्रेटेड नहीं रहता है, it crosses disciplines. You find feminist economics, right? It goes on to political science, and therefore we have feminist political theory. It goes on to feminist into the domain of religion, and therefore we have something called feminist theology. So this is the meaning of cross disciplinary, कि feminism जो है वो एक बस discipline में बंधा नहीं है, but then it crosses disciplinary, or better to say it is transdisciplinary. And feminist theorists are not only concerned, there is some typing error, it should be ED, concerned with understanding the situation of women and their position amidst unequal gender relations, but identifying efficient strategies to improve the social world so as to make it a more just place for women and for all people. And just to tell you briefly that feminism, especially in the Western world, in the Western context, is present in waves. So we call them as waves of feminism, right? First wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, like that. I'm not going to discuss in detail about it, but then just to tell you that there have been different waves of feminism, right from the late 19th century. So the first wave basically focused on legal and political rights of women, और उसका नतीजा ये हुआ कि women को right to vote मिला. And the very fact that स्त्रियों को वोट के लिए फाइट करना पड़ा, ये बताता है कि women were not considered as citizens at all, right? उनको citizen समझा ही नहीं जाता था, उनको नागरिक समझा ही नहीं जाता था, and therefore they had to fight for right to vote. So first wave feminism का जो पहला major goal था, वो था कि women को right to vote मिले, enfranchisement, right to vote मिले, और political और legal rights मिले. और उसके बाद सेकेंड वेव फेमिनिज्म जो आया, उसमें ये बात उठी कि पहले आई वुड लाइक टू से कि इसको वेव क्यों कहते हैं. आई होप यू अंडरस्टैंड कि वेव कैसा होता है, ऊपर जाता है, नीचे आता है. और इसीलिए जब सेकेंड वेव आया, तब जाके हमने टर्मिनोलॉजी चूज किया कि ओके, ये सेकेंड वेव आया है, तो इसके पहले का जो फेमिनिस्ट एक्टिविज्म था, उसको जो स्कॉलर्स थे उन्होंने फर्स्ट वेव का नाम दिया, क्योंकि 1920 में अमेरिकन वुमेन को राइट टू वोट मिला, राइट. उसके बाद ये लगा कि अच्छा, और बहुत सारे पॉलिटिकल लीगल राइट्स मिले, और बहुत सारे जो एग्जिस्टिंग लॉज थे उनमें पॉजिटिव चेंजेस किए गए. तो वुमेन को और सोसाइटी को ये लगा कि चलो अब फेमिनिज्म खत्म हो गया, अब इसकी कोई जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि वुमेन को जो चाहिए था वो मिल गया. दे वांटेड पॉलिटिकल राइट्स, लीगल राइट्स, राइट टू वोट, सब तो मिल गया. तो अब फेमिनिज्म या फेमिनिस्ट या वुमेन्स मूवमेंट की क्या जरूरत है. बट देन ये 1920 था, especially in the American context. I guess by the early 1960s, धीरे धीरे फिर से फेमिनिस्ट जो है वो अपनी बातों को आगे रखने लगी, और फेमिनिस्ट एक्टिविज्म धीरे धीरे देखा जाने लगा. तो 1920 और 1960 के बीच में, आई होप यू अंडरस्टैंड, ये ऑलमोस्ट 40 साल का समय था. ओके, तो इन 40 सालों में भी women, स्पेशली वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन women को ये लगा कि हमें तो राइट टू वोट मिला, पॉलिटिकल लीगल राइट्स मिले, बट अभी भी why is it that we are still oppressed? Why is it that we are still being discriminated, not only in the public sphere but also in the private sphere? कि हम घर में भी ऐसा क्यों है कि हमारे अगेंस्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है, और बाहर भी होता है, तो ऐसा क्यों है? And then they started, 40 years time is basically considered to be a kind of time wherein the feminists gradually started thinking about their own position in the society, their social location in their respective societies, और उनको ये realize हुआ कि unless and until हम family को change करते हैं, प्राइवेट स्पेस को चेंज करते हैं, प्राइवेट स्फीयर को चेंज करते हैं, अनलेस एंड अनटिल इक्वालिटी वहां आती है, हमको हमारे वर्क प्लेस में या बाहर की दुनिया में, इकोनॉमी, पॉलिटी, रिलीजन, उसमें जो भी हमें राइट्स मिले हैं, दे विल नॉट बी इफेक्टिव अनलेस एंड अनटिल वी focus on certain issues which belong to the private realm, the domestic space. और वो issues basically थे sexual violence, marital rape, pornography, prostitution, etc., etc. Right? So इन दो waves का ये बेसिक डिफरेंस था कि फर्स्ट वेव जो थे वो विमेन की जो आउट पब्लिक स्फीयर की राइट्स थे उनको वो चाहिए थे, उन्होंने उस पर फोकस किया. सेकेंड वेव फेमिनिस्ट ने वो घर के अंदर जो होता है, जो प्राइवेट स्पेस के अंदर जो उनको सेकेंडरी स्टेटस मिला हुआ था, या जो भी वट एवर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन दे हैड टू फेस विद इन द डोमेस्टिक स्पेस, दे फोकस्ड ऑन दैट. और थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म जो है वो बेसिकली ये माना जाता है कि वो सेकेंड वेव फेमिनिज्म के टाइम से ही और या उसी टाइम से नॉर्मली वो शुरू होता है, सेकेंड वेव फेमिनिज्म. सो आई थॉट आई वुड जस्ट टेल यू अबाउट इट. और ये भी एक फैक्ट है कि women जो है हमेशा से subjugate की गई हैं, dominated हैं, oppressed हैं, but still women have made great strides and continue to struggle to eliminate all the discriminatory and exclusionary practices directed towards them. And feminism's main objective is to achieve equality for all at the cultural, social, political, economic and global levels. And in this struggle, women have come up with their own strategies कि किस तरीके से हम इक्वल हो सकते हैं, या किस तरीके से हम हमारी सहभागिता हो सकती है जो पब्लिक डोमेन या प्राइवेट डोमेन है उसमें. तो prominent among these strategies are social movements या different types of political activism, intellectual activism, scholarly expressions through books or articles or essays. So these are the different strategies which have been designed by women or the feminists to achieve equality for everyone, not only for themselves. Feminists have never said that they want only equality for themselves, or they want only to concentrate on women, but then it is somehow, especially the kind of feminism which we see in the context of the third world, it is an all-inclusive feminism, because it doesn't only talk about sexism as the only issue in women's lives, but then it brings about it brings in the issues of race, sexuality, ethnicity, etc., etc. Just a few definitions. I just brought in two definitions. One is by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks was an African American feminist scholar, one of the most known names in African feminism, right? African American feminism in general, in particular, sorry. And she says feminism is a struggle to end sexist oppression. Barbara Smith says feminism is the political theory and practice that struggles to free all women, women of color, working class women, poor women, disabled women, lesbians, old women, as well as white, economically privileged, heterosexual women. Anything less than this vision of total freedom is not feminism, but merely female self-aggrandizement. और ये एज यू कैन सी, ये जो सेकेंड डेफिनेशन है ये कितना इंक्लूसिव डेफिनेशन है, क्योंकि ये सिर्फ एक टाइप की women को फ्री करने की बात नहीं करते. women of color, working class women, poor women, disabled women, lesbians, heterosexual women, even white elite class women, सबको फ्री करने की बात ये करती है ये डेफिनेशन. तो थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन जो टर्म है उसके लिए कई बार हम विमेन ऑफ कलर टर्म का भी यूज करते हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि इट्स नॉट वाइट, राइट? सो इट्स बेसिकली द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड विमेन हु हैव दैट वाइट स्किन कलर. और थर्ड वर्ल्ड विमेन जो है, वेदर दे आर इन एशिया, अफ्रीका, लैटिन अमेरिका, कैरिबियन, जहाँ भी ये, यू विल फाइंड दैट दे हैव डिफरेंट स्किन कलर्स. They have different skin colors, and therefore women of color is a preferred term among many feminist scholars. और ये कुछ नाम है जो बहुत importance रखते हैं when we talk of third world feminism. As you can see, Chandra Mohanty, Gayatri Spivak, Uma Narayan, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Angela Davis, Sheila Sandoval, Gloria Anzaldúa, Trinity Minha, Leela Ahmed, Nawal El Saadawi, Patricia Hill Collins, बहुत सारे नाम हैं. I have just brought in a few, but it doesn't mean कि बस इतने ही लोग हैं जो importance रखते हैं थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट थियरी में. नहीं, बहुत सारे नेम है, but then इन्होंने बहुत मेजर काम किए हैं, तो I thought I can bring their names here. And these feminists have looked at third world women from their own perspectives and provided their own views about what is a third world woman, and how can we define third world feminism. There are many scholars who often locate third world women in terms of underdevelopment, oppressive traditions, high illiteracy, rural and urban poverty, religious fanaticism, overpopulation, especially in the context of Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America, etc. Third world women are not confined to a particular geographical space. जो कि अभी थोड़ी देर पहले हम लोगों ने देखा कि वी कांट से कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन बस एशिया अफ्रीका में ही पाई जाएंगी और कहीं नहीं, दे आर नॉट confined to a particular geographical space within the boundaries of the third world countries. We find third world women in poor and rich countries, in the north and south, in the core and periphery. So third world women have their presence almost everywhere. Now, this is how Chandra Mohanty, sorry, I think, am I repeating it? Yeah. So Chandra Mohanty का ये कहना है कि what seems to constitute women of color or third world women as a viable oppositional alliance is a common context of struggle rather than color or racial identification. तो जब हम third world women को women of color कहते हैं, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि हम उनको सिर्फ स्किन कलर के बेसिस पे डिवाइड कर रहे हैं और डिफरेंशिएट कर रहे हैं वाइट women से, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, या फिर उनके रेस के बेसिस पे उनको डिफरेंशिएट कर रहे हैं वाइट और वेस्टर्न women से, ऐसा नहीं है. बट देन इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ आइडियोलॉजिकल कंस्ट्रक्ट अकॉर्डिंग टू चंद्रा मोहंती, एंड it is this third world women's oppositional political relation to sexist, racist and imperialistic structures that constitutes our political commonalities. तो उनका कहना है कि हम इन सब grounds पे common है कि we are against sexism, we are against racism, we are against any form of imperialistic structure or imperialism, and therefore these are the common elements which can be found in third world feminist philosophy, different philosophies, because even third world feminism भी बस एक टाइप का फेमिनिज्म नहीं है. क्यों? क्योंकि थर्ड वर्ल्ड में बहुत सारी कंट्रीज आते हैं, तो जो अफ्रीका का फेमिनिज्म होगा वो एशिया के फेमिनिज्म से डिफरेंट होगा. क्यों? क्योंकि वो जोग्राफिकली किसी और जगह पे सिचुएटेड है जो कि एशिया से डिफरेंट है. वहाँ का कल्चर अलग है, हिस्ट्री अलग है, how they experienced colonialism वो भी अलग है. So how can we say that third world feminism is just one single universal monolithic category of analysis? We can't say that. And therefore it is important that the experiences, voices, politics of third world women are to be demarginalized and included in the mainstream analysis and knowledge construction. तो बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन जिनको कि सेंटर पे नहीं रखा गया, वो they occupy the margins, they occupy the periphery. सोसाइटी का जो पेरिफेरी होता है, मार्जिन होता है, जो बाउंड्री बॉर्डर होता है, they are placed there, or better to say they are pushed there. And therefore if you happen to be a third world feminism, अगर आप third world feminist हैं या आप third world feminist की आइडियोलॉजी में विश्वास करती हैं, तो it becomes important कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन के एक्सपीरियंसेस को, उनकी आवाज को और उनका जो अपना चीजों को देखने का नजरिया, देयर ओन वर्ल्ड व्यूज, देयर पॉलिटिक्स, उनको सेंटर पे लाया जाए, मेन स्ट्रीम, इन द मेन स्ट्रीम डिस्कशन, एनालिसिस एंड नॉलेज कंस्ट्रक्शन. And this is why third world feminism is important. This is a little long, I guess 2 or 3 sentences only paragraph, but then it is very important. So I will read before you, but you also please read. So any discussion, Chandra Mohanty का कहना है कि जब हम थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म की बात करते हैं, पहली बात ये कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म को डिफाइन करना ही एक बहुत ही कॉम्प्लेक्स प्रोसेस है, एक बहुत ही डिफिकल्ट टास्क है. और वो कहते हैं कि any discussion of the intellectual and political construction of third world feminism must address itself to 2 simultaneous projects: the internal critique of hegemonic Western feminism and the formulation of autonomous feminist concerns and strategies that are geographically, historically, and culturally grounded. सो जो पहला प्रोजेक्ट है दैट इज वन ऑफ डीकंस्ट्रक्टिंग एंड डिसमेंटलिंग. तो हम उसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो ऑलरेडी सेट आइडियाज हैं मेन स्ट्रीम फेमिनिस्ट फिलोसफी के बारे में, वी नीड टू डीकंस्ट्रक्ट इट. उसको हमें तोड़ना होगा. क्यों? क्योंकि दैट डज नॉट इंक्लूड ऑल विमेन. और जो दूसरा है द सेकेंड इज वन ऑफ बिल्डिंग एंड कंस्ट्रक्टिंग. उसको तोड़ना है, बट देन साइड बाय साइड साइमल्टेनियसली वी हैव टू बिल्ड अ फेमिनिस्ट लिटरेचर ऑफ, सॉरी, a feminist philosophy of our own, which can be called as a third world feminist philosophy, which is not like the the West imported Western ideals of feminism. So while these projects appear to be contradictory, the one working negatively and the other positively, unless these two tasks are addressed simultaneously, third world feminisms run the risk. And please, I hope you can see, यहाँ पे feminism का singular use नहीं है. It is used in plural feminisms. सो थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म नहीं है, थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म्स है. और ये एक शब्द ही हमें बताता है कि इसका मतलब है कि थर्ड वर्ल्ड में बहुत तरीके के फेमिनिस्ट फिलोसफीज हैं. सो थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म्स रन द रिस्क ऑफ मार्जिनलाइजेशन एंड गेटोइजेशन फ्रॉम बोथ मेन स्ट्रीम एंड वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट डिस्कोर्सेज. और ये भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. उमा नारायण अगेन इज वन वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट नेम इन थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट फिलोसफी. A third world feminist, because she says that calling myself a third world feminist is problematic only when the term is understood narrowly to refer exclusively to feminists living and functioning within third world countries, as it sometimes is. But like many terms, third world feminist has a number of current usages. Some feminists of communities of color in Western contexts have also applied the term third world to themselves, their communities, and their politics to call political attention to similarities in the locations of and problems faced by their communities and communities in third world countries. And she goes on to say that as a feminist of color living in the United States, I continue to be a third world feminist in this broader sense of the term. Madam, shall we pause for some time? It's 6 o'clock.
जी, आपको लगता है ऐसा इसके बाद में कुछ इंटरेक्शन होना चाहिए? जितना अभी तक आपने बताया तो कर सकते हैं हम.
और आई कैन कंप्लीट
जैसे आपको ठीक लगेगा. अगर कंटिन्यू करना चाहती है तो कर सकते हैं, और फिर लास्ट में हम करेंगे.
हाँ ठीक है मैम, तो आई विल जस्ट कंटिन्यू.
हाँ, श्योर.
So you see, I'm trying my best to make it clear as to what is a third world, who is a third world woman, and what are the characteristic features of third world feminism. Okay, now third world feminism में बहुत types के feminisms आते हैं. I will be focusing on African feminism क्योंकि it's difficult to bring in everything. There are many different types of feminist philosophies coming under third world feminism. Okay. But then there are many scholars who believe that it all starts with the emergence of African feminism. Okay, before that, I have this slide which says that third world feminism is basically viewed as a critique of white Western feminism. So can we take it like that? Yes, we can take it like that. Because third world feminism basically इसी कारण से इमर्ज हुआ क्योंकि उसको थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट को वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट जो कह रही थी या जिस तरीके से अपनी बात रख रही थी, उनको वो बातें सही नहीं लगी. उनको लगा कि ये बहुत ही एक्सक्लूजनरी है. क्यों? क्योंकि वो सिर्फ जेंडर डिफरेंसेस की बात करती थी कि मैन एंड वुमेन आर डिफरेंट, दे हैव these biological differences, they have these gender differences, and therefore men have always been in positions of power. Women हमेशा से oppressed रही हैं. Okay, fine. Sexism is present in the lives of each and every woman, including you, including me. None of the women, I guess, would say कि उनको अपने biological sex के कारण कोई discrimination face नहीं करना पड़ा. So if somebody says that, I think it is, at least for me personally, it will be very hard to believe कि they have not faced any kind of sexism in their lives, right? Many of us are, working women. Many of us are, going out or being at home, doing various things within a group of people, and as a woman, what all different types of discriminatory practices which we have to face. I don't think it is difficult for us to pinpoint and difficult for us to understand. So third world feminism also emerged as a critique of Western feminism. And first world feminism again can be called as Western feminism, and it is referred in different texts differently. So these are the interchangeable terminologies. So it is also known as Western feminism, white feminism, etc. And its basic tenets and conclusions only apply to women in developed industrialized countries. Other analytical categories such as race, class, position in national structures are less important than gender to the first world or the Western feminists. So what is first world feminism? इसको कैसे define करें या कैसे समझें? I have just tried to bring in a few features. There are many. So sex inequality constitutes the major problem faced by women. जो Western feminists हैं उनका ये मानना है कि men and women are, males and females are biologically different. They belong to different sexes, and ये जो difference है, this is the major, this is the only difference, right? This is the only inequality which exists between women and men, according to majority, I would say, according to majority of the initial, Western feminists or the first world feminists. तो उन्होंने बस focus किया sex inequality पे. They never touched upon issues of race, disability, sexuality, etc. And first world feminists or Western feminists focuses mainly on women's roles in the workplace, कि उनको workplace में equal rights चाहिए, decent working opportunities चाहिए, equal wages, education, property rights, custody rights, issues of sexual violence. तो ये सारे demands हैं जो major demands हैं white feminists और Western feminism के. And उनका कहना है कि women should get the right to have full-time jobs and equal wages, ignoring other women's choices to work part-time. ऐसा नहीं है कि I always tell my students कि ऐसा जो मान लिया जाता है समाज के द्वारा कि if you are born with a female body, अगर आप एक female body के साथ जन्म लेती है तो आपको तो cooking आनी ही आनी है. अरे क्यों आनी है? Are we born with a cooking gene? Do we have a cooking gene inside us? नहीं है. Similarly, ये मान लिया जाता है कि अगर कोई मर्द है तो उसको तो बाहर करना ही है काम. I mean, बाहर in the sense उसको पब्लिक डोमेन में, पेड लेबर मार्केट में उसको काम करना ही करना है. वो घर पे नहीं बैठ सकता. क्यों? ये जो प्रोटेक्टर और प्रोवाइडर और ब्रेड अर्नर का इमेज हमने कंस्ट्रक्ट किया है मेन के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, सो दैट इज ऑल्सो प्रॉब्लमेटिक. वाई? बिकॉज वो सारे के सारे पुरुषों को ये कहता है कि आपको तो काम करना है. यू कैन नॉट सिट एट होम, यू कैन नॉट बी अ होम मेकर, यू हैव टू गो आउट एंड वर्क, you have to be the provider for your family, and not only provider, let me tell you, you also have to be the protector of the family. So ये सारी images हैं जो I hope these are all basic things all of you already know about it, but still. तो जब वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट्स ने ये इमेज क्रिएट की कि उनको फुल टाइम जॉब्स चाहिए, उनको इक्वल वेजेस चाहिए, उन्होंने अपने ही सोसाइटी की, अपनी ही कम्युनिटी की, अपने ही कंट्री की अदर वुमेन की चॉइसेस को ध्यान में नहीं रखा. ऐसा नहीं है कि सारी वुमेन को 10 to 5 काम करना बहुत अच्छा लगता है, नहीं लगता है. ईच वन ऑफ अस बिकॉज वी नो दैट इधर आप बाहर काम कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं, और स्पेशली व्हेन यू चूज टू वर्क आउटसाइड द डोमेस्टिक स्पेस, अगर आपके पास एक जॉब है तो दैट जॉब बिकम सेकेंडरी टू यू. क्यों? क्योंकि सोसाइटी आपको राइट फ्रॉम चाइल्डहुड, द सेम सोसाइटी सोशलाइजेज यू इनटू थिंकिंग कि आप जो भी कर लो, आप इंदिरा नूई बन जाओ, आप इंदिरा गांधी बन जाओ, आप कल्पना चावला बन के स्पेस में चले जाओ, पीटी उषा बन जाओ, राइट? बट देन घर आके आपको एक मदर बनना है, एक वाइफ बनना है, और वो सारी वाइफली मदरली ड्यूटीज आपको फुलफिल करनी है, राइट? ये कोई नहीं सोचता कि सारी की सारी women को वो 10 to 5 टाइमिंग सूट नहीं करेगा. एंड लेट मी टेल यू, आई कैन गिव यू माई एग्जाम्पल राइट नाउ. आई स्टे विथ माई 5-year-old kid. तो अभी ये टाइमिंग ऐसा था कि आई हैव अ फुल टाइम बेबी सिटर, फुल टाइम इन द सेंस वो 8 बजे आती है, 5 बजे जाती है, बट बिकॉज ये कोर्स ऑलरेडी शेड्यूल्ड था एंड आई ऑलरेडी सेड यस टू इट, 5 से 7 का जो ये टाइम है, आई हैव टू लीव माई चाइल्ड एट माई फ्रेंड्स हाउस and requested her ki please take care of him for another 2-3 hours, I'll be back by 7:30. So please don't mistake me, I'm not accusing or blaming anyone. It is the structure which is to be blamed. It is the entire structure of the society which is to be blamed, which does not take into consideration the specific needs and demands of a woman. 10 to 5 का जो वर्किंग आवर है वो मेन के कन्वीनियंस को ध्यान में रख के बनाया गया था, विमेन के कन्वीनियंस को नहीं। क्योंकि एक फीमेल को जब आप एम्प्लॉय करते हैं तो यू वेरी वेल नो कि शी मे बिकम अ मदर आफ्टर सम टाइम, अ पेरेंट आफ्टर सम टाइम. So do you provide her with enough breaks so that if she is a lactating mother कि वो जाके अपने बच्चे को फीड करके आए? और क्या आपके यहाँ क्रैश फैसिलिटी है अगर आप फीमेल एम्प्लॉयज को एम्प्लॉय कर रहे हैं? तो these are not considerations at all. These are not at all considerations in the minds of the public policy makers. और वही पुराना सदियों पुराना 9 से 6 या 10 से 5 का वर्किंग आवर चला आ रहा है. सारे के सारे ऑफिस के बाहर आपको जरूर मिलेगा एक चाय का शॉप, एक सिगरेट का शॉप, राइट? सो दैट मेन कैन गो देयर एंड रिलैक्स देमसेल्व्स. हाउ मेनी टाइम्स यू हैव कम अक्रॉस एन एस्टैब्लिशमेंट, अ कंपनी और एन ऑफिस जिसके बाहर की एक पार्क होगा या फिर अ डे केयर होगा, अ क्रश फैसिलिटी होगी? नहीं रहता है. Why? Because if a woman chooses to work outside the home, that is her secondary choice. Primarily, you are a homemaker. You have to be a homemaker. But for a man, it is the other way around. वो घर पे रहे नहीं रहे, that doesn't matter. 5 बजे के बाद, I am telling you, I see here right in the university कि अगर 5 बजे के बाद आप यूनिवर्सिटी कैंपस के बाहर जाओ, there are chai shops and cigarette shops. I see many men on a daily basis, regular basis, enjoying a puff of cigarette or a cup of tea. और हमारे मन में क्या होता है? 4 बज गया, 5 बज गया, अरे मेरा बच्चा अकेले होगा, अरे घर जाके खाने के बारे में सोचना है, बनाना है, या फिर कोई घर पे कोई बीमार है, बूढ़ा है, सिक है, जिसको की केयर की जरूरत है. तो दैट केयरिंग रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज also fall upon us. So these are things which are normally not taken into consideration, and these were the things which were not taken into consideration by the Western feminists as well. That led to the emergence of third world feminism. Anyway, I'll move ahead. So first world feminism refuses to acknowledge women's struggle to keep the balance between motherhood and family and work and career demands. It ignores the social, cultural, historical and political systems that shape women. तो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट्स जब फेमिनिज्म को डिफाइन करती हैं तो वो भूल जाती हैं कि अफ्रीका में विमेन का सोशियो कल्चरल अलग कॉन्टेक्स्ट है, एशिया में अलग है, लैटिन अमेरिका में अलग है, वहाँ का कल्चर अलग है. तो डेफिनेटली दैट कल्चर वुड इम्पैक्ट द वुमेन देयर डिफरेंटली. बट देन this is something which was missing in the mainstream white Western first world feminism, and that led to the emergence of feminism of color or third world feminism or African or Asian feminism, whatever way you may want to put it. And they call for global sisterhood, which is again very much contested by the third world feminism. वो कहती हैं कि जैसे कि मार्क्स ने कहा कि दुनिया के सारे मजदूर एक हो जाओ, राइट? ओके फाइन, दुनिया के सारे मजदूर एक हो जाओ, कार्ल मार्क्स ने कहा था. वैसे ही वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट का कहना है कि दुनिया की सारी औरतें तुम एक साथ आ जाओ, सिस्टरहुड, एक ग्लोबल सिस्टरहुड बना लो. हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल? हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल unless and until you acknowledge the existence of race in the lives of Black African women, unless and until you accept the existence of caste dynamics in the life of an Asian woman, an Indian woman. जब आप इंडिया की बात करेंगे तो आप कास्ट को नहीं छोड़ सकते, एंड जब आप कंडीशन ऑफ वुमेन इन इंडिया की बात करेंगे तो भी आप कास्ट को नहीं छोड़ सकते, क्योंकि द काइंड ऑफ exploitation which a Dalit woman experiences at the hands of patriarchy is not the same as is experienced by a Brahmin woman or a woman of upper caste. So आप क्लास की बात नहीं करोगे, आप कास्ट की बात नहीं करोगे, आप रेस की बात नहीं करोगे, आप एथनिसिटी की बात नहीं करोगे, आप सेक्सुअलिटी को पूरी तरीके से नकार दोगे कि नहीं है, होमोसेक्सुअलिटी तो कुछ है ही नहीं. हाउ कैन देयर बी होमोसेक्सुअल्स? हाउ कैन देयर बी लेस्बियंस? तो जब आप इन सब पैरामीटर्स को छोड़ देते हैं तो यू कैन नॉट हैव अ ग्लोबल सिस्टरहुड, एंड दिस इज व्हाट हैज बीन कंटेस्टेड बाय द थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट्स. सो जब डिफरेंस की बात आती है कि वेस्टर्न और थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म में क्या डिफरेंसेस है, तो ये वुमेन को कैसे कंसेप्चुअलाइज किया जाता है, ये उससे शुरू होता है. तो एज आई हैव सेड बिफोर कि वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट जो है वो वुमेन को एक यूनिवर्सल कैटेगरी मानती है, मतलब एक सिंगल कैटेगरी है वुमेन. देयर कैन नॉट बी एनी डिफरेंस within the category of women. Women matlab women, okay? So there cannot be black women, there cannot be Asian women, there cannot be Chinese women, there cannot be, you know, Sri Lankan women. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. So they just say that कि woman is a universal category, and the third world feminists have a lot of issues with this universalization or universalizing tendency of white Western feminism, which just says that woman is a single category of analysis. Why? Because they believe, they understand that woman is not a single category. There are rich women, there are poor women, there are heterosexual women, homosexual women, able-bodied women, disabled women, right? So हम नहीं बोल सकते कि women बस एक ही single category है और उसमें कोई difference नहीं है. And here the situation of women is perceived not only as the result of unequal gender relations, but as a consequence of a wide range of oppressive situations that transcend gender categories and are also related to race, class, citizenship intersections. So for third world feminism, basic needs are their basic rights. इसका मतलब ये है कि जैसे कि यू नो वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट्स ने सबसे पहले राइट टू वोट, राइट टू पॉलिटिकल इक्वालिटी, ये सब पे जोर दिया. तो आप बस ये सोच के देखिए कि एक औरत जिसके पास खाने के लिए नहीं है, जिसके पास अगले टाइम खाने के लिए कुछ नहीं है, कपड़े नहीं है, यू नो शेल्टर नहीं है, वो क्या बोलते हैं, हेल्थ केयर नीड्स, हेल्थ केयर फैसिलिटीज नहीं है, उस औरत के लिए यू जस्ट टेल मी कि उस औरत, उस स्त्री के लिए राइट टू वोट जरूरी होगा या राइट टू फूड जरूरी होगा. और यही बातें हैं जो वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट ने कभी मानी ही नहीं, और या बेटर टू से उन्होंने कभी इन बातों को इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं दिया कि एक औरत के लिए राइट टू वोट से ज्यादा जरूरी एक टाइम में राइट टू फूड भी हो सकता है, राइट टू शेल्टर भी हो सकता है. और जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं, थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज आर बेसिकली पुअर कंट्रीज, दे आर अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज और डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज. तो पॉवर्टी यहाँ पे बहुत ज्यादा है, ओवर पॉपुलेटेड है, पॉवर्टी बहुत ज्यादा है, रिसोर्सेज बहुत कम है, राइट. तो ऐसी औरतों के लिए ये खाना पीना कपड़े, ये बेसिक नीड ज्यादा जरूरी है, बजाय इसके कि वो राइट टू वोट के लिए डिमांड करे. और यही रीजन है कि मैंने एक स्लाइड में लिखा था कि दे आर कंसिडर्ड एज लेस फेमिनिस्ट. यही रीजन है कि वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट्स की नजर में थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट आर लेसर फेमिनिस्ट. ओके, I have tried to bring in a few important features of third world feminism. So first of all, जो वेस्ट की imposed terminologies हैं, labels हैं, उससे थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट को बहुत प्रॉब्लम है. इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बहुत सारे एग्जांपल्स दिए जा सकते हैं. I have brought in the example of womanism. Now, Alice Walker has been an African, feminist writer. उनकी एक किताब थी इन सर्च ऑफ आवर मदर्स गार्डन. उन्होंने ये टर्म को कॉइन किया, वुमनिज्म. और उनका ये कहना था कि एज यू कैन सी, वॉकर डिफाइंस वुमनिस्ट एज अ ब्लैक फेमिनिस्ट और फेमिनिस्ट ऑफ कलर. क्यों? क्योंकि उनको ये लगा कि फेमिनिज्म जो शब्द है वो वेस्ट से आया है और वो हमारी भावनाओं को, हमारी नीड्स को उजागर नहीं करता है. एंड देयरफॉर शी वेंट ऑन टू कॉइन दिस टर्म वुमनिज्म. और दूसरा है फेमिनिज्म विथ अ स्मॉल एफ, कि हम फेमिनिज्म वर्ड यूज करेंगे लेकिन एक स्मॉल एफ के साथ, एक लोअर केस एफ के साथ. और ये बुची एमेचेता एक अफ्रीकन राइटर है, उन्होंने कहा है कि जो स्मॉल एफ है वो रिप्रेजेंट करता है एक सिंबॉलिक मॉडिफिकेशन को वेस्टर्न फेमिनिज्म में. तो सारे आइडियाज सेम है बट स्टिल. और she says, I will just quote her, I will not be called a feminist here because it is European. It is as simple as that. I just resent that. I don't like being defined by them. It is just that it comes from outside and I don't like people dictating to me. I do believe in the African type of feminism. They call it womanism because you see, you Europeans don't worry about water. You don't worry about schooling. You are so well off. Now I buy land and I say, okay, I can't build on it, I have no money, so I give it to some women to start planting. That is my brand of feminism. I hope it is clear how, the third world feminists have gone on to define their own, uh, come up with their own ideas of feminism. And then this is one very important aspect of third world feminism, whether you find it in Africa, America, Latin America, anywhere, that most of the third world feminists believe that third world women have, or third world communities have a faith in community life. Ki they are against the individualism of the Western countries में, an individual is like an atom, वो एक entity है, individual entity, उसका relationship से ऐसा वैसा कोई बहुत ज्यादा attachment नहीं रहता है, तो the entire focus is on the individual per se. But then when you look at the third world countries, you will find that the individual there is not a single entity. क्योंकि वहां पे selfhood जो है वो unless and until you understand personhood, you won't become a self, right? You won't have a self. So selfhood is complete only with the recognition of personhood. An individual is surrounded by a web of relationship. हम आप अपने आसपास देख सकते हैं, right? So relationship के एक web में हम बंधे हुए हैं. And these social relations are the starting point in third world societies, right? And okay, I'll just the last one, Ubuntu, maybe आप लोगों में से बहुत लोगों ने पढ़ा होगा. ये एक African humanist philosophy है. It is a way of thinking about what it means to be a human. और इसका ये मानना है कि as humans, हम वो हैं जो हम दूसरे के बारे में सोचते हैं. So your sense of self is shaped by your relationships with other people. Okay, मेरा आपके साथ क्या relationship है, that will shape who I am. And it is a way of living that begins with the premise that I am only because we are. मैं हूँ क्योंकि आप हैं. So that is that, African humanist philosophy, and Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, all that we have. Another feature of third world feminism is that it is opposed to everything which is universal in its projection. So that is there because it believes in the diversity of human categories and human experiences. So all human beings cannot be clubbed together under the umbrella term of human beings, right? Because human beings have so many differences. They can be categorized in different ways. And also, the experience of myself as a human being is going to differ from you because I'm different from you, and therefore we, both of us or all of us, can have different experiences. And this is what third world feminism believes in. And this idea of a universal and homogeneous human nature excludes and marginalizes the differences and distinctive characteristics of third world societies. So third world feminists का ये कहना था कि when Western feminists define third world women and third world feminism, they marginalize the differences. वो एक्नोलेज ही नहीं करती हैं कि women के भीतर भी differences हो सकते हैं. There can be different categories of women. They are against grand narratives of Western feminism. Western women have been criticized for conflating the experiences of white Western middle class women with the experiences of. तो Western women इसलिए भी criticized हुई third world feminists के द्वारा क्योंकि उनका ये मानना था कि Western women जो वो अपने experiences को ही universalize कर देती हैं. उनका कहना है कि वो अगर I am a victim of I am a victim of sexual inequality, it means all women are victims of only and only sexual or gender inequality. They don't want to acknowledge that एक African woman के life में sexism तो काम करता ही है, sexism तो काम करता ही है, racism भी उतना ही उतने ही deeply वो manifest करता है उनकी lives में. So जहाँ तक African women की बात है, they can't leave aside the issue of racism while talking about feminism. For example, the notion that sisterhood is global, as developed by Western feminists, is criticized by third world feminists for not taking into account the differences among women throughout the globe. Moreover, इससे एक अदर कॉन्सेप्ट जनरेट होता है जो कि फेमिनिस्ट थियरी का एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट माना जाता है, विच इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ अदरिंग. तो थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिस्ट ये कहती हैं कि जब वेस्टर्न फेमिनिस्ट हमारे डिफरेंसेस को एक्नोलेज करती हैं, मानती हैं, तो मानती तो हैं, लेकिन थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन को वो अदर बना देती हैं, राइट? अदर. So they are our non-Western others. They are not us, but then this is me and this is my other. This is how the Western feminists have, labeled the third world women into a non-Western other. Many third world women feel that they have much more in common with the third world men than the white Western women when it comes to oppression. Now, this is also very important. Western feminists basically started with the ideology that men are our enemies, और वही एक negative baggage है जो आज तक चला आ रहा है in almost all societies. You know, when you say that you are a feminist, तो सोसाइटी आपको कहती है ओ यू मस्ट बी अ मैन हेटर इजंट इट, तो आप तो नो यू मस्ट बी अगेंस्ट एवरीथिंग मेन एंड मेल एंड मैस्कुलिन, जबकि ऐसा नहीं है, राइट? बट देन व्हेन इट कम्स टू थर्ड वर्ल्ड फेमिनिज्म, थर्ड वर्ल्ड वुमेन, उनके लिए थर्ड वर्ल्ड मेन के साथ मिलके काम करना इज वेरी मच इम्पोर्टेंट. For example, African feminism is against the exclusion of men from women's issues. They want their men folk to be partners in the process of social change. क्यों? क्योंकि उनको ये बात समझ में आती है कि racism is as much a factor in our lives as sexism. So unless and until we include men in our struggle against racism, we won't be able to change anything about the sexism which is existing in our lives. And therefore, African feminism हमेशा से मेन को इंक्लूड करना चाहते हैं अपने स्ट्रगल में, वेदर इट्स अ स्ट्रगल अगेंस्ट सेक्सिज्म और रेसिज्म, एंड दे आर्ग्यू फॉर अ पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ कॉम्प्लीमेंटारिटी एंड कोऑपरेशन बिटवीन वुमेन एंड मेन. तो कोऑपरेशन होना चाहिए against the individualism and emphasis on sexuality and conflict with men identified within Western feminism. Okay, I can skip this. So to talk about African feminism, again, there are different types of African feminism. To speak of feminism in Africa is to speak of feminisms in plural within Africa and between Africa and other continents, in recognition of the multiplicity of perspectives. And African feminism is basically rooted in Black women's historical experience with enslavement. You know how slavery has functioned, how slavery has disabled the lives of Black women. Anti-lynching movements, civil rights movements, Black power movements, capitalism, sexual politics, patriarchy. So तो Black women का इतने सारे चीजों का experience है. It's not only about racism, it's not only about sexism, but then how or what slavery did to them, what the civil rights movement looked at them, how did it look at them, or how the sexual politics was played against them. So they have their experiences in them. Okay, so feminism we have already discussed. Now, African feminism, one of the major features is that it focuses on Afrocentrism. Now, what is Afrocentrism? It is oriented not only toward nation building per se, but toward reconceptualizing race, class, and gender as interlocking systems of oppression. So Afrocentrism as a philosophy believes that it is important to unlearn things which we have already learned about race, class, and gender. And we need to understand that they intersect with each other, they interlock with each other to create various systems of oppression in the lives of African women. And in this dialogue, to create a form of knowledge that is not simply oppositional, but involves dialogue between partial perspectives. So how are the issues of African women different from those of their Western sisters or counterparts? They are more complex. Why? Because apart from sexism, they have to fight with racism. They have to fight classism. And I'll just show you one. Yeah. Is it visible? This slide, white man, white woman, is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, madam. Yes.
No, I just want, I made it like this to make it clear as to how this hierarchy functions or how it works. So you see, if you consider it as a ladder, right? So white man is at the top. Then comes white woman. So it's not that women cannot be, the oppressors of women. They are very much. So still, white woman, because of her skin color, because of the race, white race to which she belongs, she has a superior position in society, especially in the American society or the European society. And she is in a position to oppress or subjugate the Black man. Okay. Now, men, all men, you can say women, all women are victims of sexism at the hands of all men, whether you belong to a lower class or an upper class, you are an able-bodied man or a disabled man. But then sex, your biological sex gives you the right to oppress or the privilege to oppress, all types of women. But then here in this hierarchy, you see that man is at the top. Then comes the white woman, and then black woman, and black man, and at the last is the black woman. So you see the positioning, the social location of black woman. She comes the last. She comes at the last, right? She comes at the last of this kind of a hierarchical ladder, and therefore she is not only oppressed by her black male counterpart on the basis of sexism, but also by the white woman, because white woman, can employ racism to oppress her, and definitely by the white man, right? So this is where the black woman is situated in, it has been always situated in the European societies. Okay, and then I'll just tell you about motherhood. So what is this? Now, and why it is important to Black feminist theory or African feminism. Motherhood is one of the most central issues in Black feminist theory. It is considered to be the greatest in a woman's life. Motherhood in simple terms, or generally it is considered to be one of the greatest phases of a woman's life, regardless of her class, her caste, her sexual identity, etc., her religion or other factors. However, in the case of Black women, what happened is that, especially during slavery times, that they were made as slaves, female African slaves, and they were they had a commercial value, in the sense that they were raped by their white masters again and again to increase the slave population, right? But then, upon childbirth, they were separated from their own children. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is that these these black female slaves had to work as governesses. You might have seen a few movies. I can remember one, such an influential movie, which I would suggest each one of you to watch, which is known as The Help. Okay, so the point is that the black female slaves have always worked as surrogate mothers to white children, because they were employed in white households, and they did not have the time to look after their own children, but then they had to look after the white children as surrogate mothers. And majority of the feminist work has focused on the experiences of white mothers, from which various generalizations have been made about all mothers. But then, let me tell you, the experiences of motherhood for a black woman has been entirely different from, those of the white women, because, either the black females were mothering white children or black children, that did not matter, because it involved the usual parental tasks of providing for the child's basic needs, okay, and also supplying nurture and guidance. And this is very well depicted in this movie called The Help. But black mothers had to perform an additional duty to socializing their own girls and boys to cope up with the reality of racism, that once you grow up, you will definitely have to face racism. And they were very often engaged in educating their girls about the dynamics of sexism. So somehow motherhood was not a choice for black women. This is what I am trying to say, that motherhood experiences of black females have been entirely different from that of white females, especially during the time of slavery. Why? Because they were raped again and again by the white masters. They became mothers, but then that had some kind of a commercial value, and then they had to look after the the white children, because they were employed in their households. Now, it is an umbrella term, definitely. And just to tell you a little bit about intersectional feminism, or the theory of intersectionality as has been proposed by Kimberly Crenshaw. You can see her image here. If you see inequality as a them problem or unfortunate other problem, that is a problem. This is what she has to say. And she is a lawyer. She's a civil rights advocate. She's basically a lawyer and also an advocate of civil rights. And she coined the term intersectionality, whereby she basically, as you can see, she explains intersectional feminism as a prism for seeing the way in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other. An intersectional approach shows the way that people's social identities can overlap That means, इसका मतलब ये है कि हम, I mean, I'm a woman, right? अगर मैं एक स्त्री हूँ, तो I'm not only a woman. I have a caste identity, right? I have a racial identity. I have a national identity. Likewise, I can have various other identities. So my gender is intersecting with various other identities, and that way we can define different. We can have different categories of individuals. That is the reason we have terms like black woman, not only woman, but then we have to specify black, or we have to specify mm, heterosexual woman, to make sure that their sexual identities are all clear or known to the people. So she's not only a woman, but then she may be an old woman, she may be a rich woman, a poor woman, a working class woman, right? Or a lesbian, or a heterosexual woman, a young woman, an old woman, etc. So there are so many factors which intersect with each other. This is what Kimberly Crenshaw basically tries to say when she, proposed her theory of intersectionality. That an intersectional approach shows the way that people's social identities can overlap. So I am not only a woman, and I'm not only a person belonging to a particular, sexual identity. They overlap with each other, and this overlapping creates various other, experiences of discrimination in the lives of women. Not only women, but because we are discussing women, I'm using the term. But then it can create experiences of discrimination in the lives of anyone, especially people belonging to the margins of the society. And she says that we tend to talk about race inequality as separate from inequality based on gender, class, sexuality, or immigrant status. What is often missing is how some people are subject to all of these, and the experience is not just the sum of its parts. So look at what the refugee women have to face, the discriminations or the problems which they have to face. They are women, right? Now, when you look at their citizenship status, they don't have a citizenship, right? So they are women, but then apart from being women, they have some kind of a citizenship status or a national identity they have, or they do not have. They might be young, they might be poor, they might be old, etc., etc. So many identities overlap or intersect with each other. So those who are most impacted by gender-based violence and by gender inequalities are also the most impoverished and marginalized: Black and brown women, indigenous women, women in rural areas, young girls, girls living with disabilities, trans youth, and gender non-conforming youth, right? Now, Black feminism or African feminism is known to many of us, right? But then there is something called Chicana feminism. Just one slide, I guess, I have prepared about it, so that at least we get to know what it is, or at least we get to know that it is also a type of feminism which falls under third world feminism, right? So as you can see,
Ashita ji, excuse me, just to sorry to interrupt you, lekin if you can conclude in 5 to 7 minutes, we will have time for the interaction. Okay.
I will, ma'am.
Okay. Thanks.
So Chicana basically refers to women of Mexican descent who are born or raised in the US. However, we cannot have a simple definition for Chicana feminism. It incorporates a wide variety of ideas and theories, just like any other feminist theory. But to understand it, Chicana feminisms constitute a political stance that confronts and undermines patriarchy as it crosscuts forms of disempowerment and silence, such as racism, homophobia, class inequality, and nationalism. And then Islamic feminism, just 2 or 3 lines about it, that there have been many campaigns in Asia and Africa. And some of the boldest theoretical formulations about Islamic feminism have been appeared in diaspora and convert communities in the West. Now, I'll just mention one important, very, very important name, which is of Amina Wadud. Now, she is an African American Muslim philosopher. She is a converted, she is a convert African American Muslim philosopher, and she wrote a book called Quran and Women, her first book, and she as you can see, the third point, 2005 March 18, she shocked the Islamic world by leading a mixed gender Friday prayer congregation in New York. And this event caused an instant uproar within the global Islamic community and showed how conservative and unwilling to deal with change the majority of the Muslim public is. And she says that men had been speaking from their own lived realities for centuries and calling it universal. As Muslim women speak, we say some things differently from that which men have said for over a millennium. And men were in charge, and women were here to support men's movement towards the divine. Uh, okay, so because of the paucity of time, I told you in the beginning itself that it's a very vast subject area, third world feminism. There are so many, we can even take one country at a time falling under third world and discuss how women's activism or feminism has emerged there. Anyway, to conclude, the point is that we need third world feminism. We can't do away with that, especially for women of the third world. We need a third world feminism. Why? Because it's not a Western import which has been imposed upon the women of the third world, the people of the third world. It has its own socio-cultural, historical context. It has developed over a period of time. It is a very rich literature, right? A body of literature exists on third world feminist philosophy or third world feminism. It's not that we don't find anything. There's a very rich literature. And third world is still a term that most clearly approximates the features of the world as we understand it. So it's not that, we were called third world in the 1960s and 70s and now things have changed. We still happen to be the poor countries. We still happen to be underdeveloped. We still happen to be the developing countries, with not so much of modern technology or warfare, etc., etc. And therefore, people like, scholars like Chandra Mohanty argue that it is a term which most clearly approximates the features of the world as we understand it. But one important thing to be mentioned is that third world feminists should not focus merely on the local or the national. That means that Black women should not only focus on their status within Africa or only in racial context, but then it has to be a kind of transnational feminism, right? So with that, I conclude. Thank you so much, madam, for giving me this opportunity. I hope I did justice. I tried to do. I did or not, that you will be able to tell me.
No, it is a very thoroughly studied, in detail, a very well prepared presentation, very scholarly lecture. Thanks a lot. Now we invite, if we have questions, we'll take few questions. Please raise your hand or type it in chat box if you have any questions or any comments or any suggestions. Prachiji, please.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. It was a very excellent lecture. You have covered the original thought process and various aspects of third word. Thank you so much. I have one query. As you had said that particularly African feminism has emerged an alternative to the mainstream feminism. But what about Southeast Asian feminism, or what about Indian context? Because the entire endeavor of this introduction to Indian feminism, that is for, can we have the original thought process and it can be an alternative to mainstream feminism and it can be a holistic and applicable to each and every woman on the globe. So what is your opinion on that?
Ma'am, what I think is that we definitely have, a history of our own feminist struggle. The point is that there are many scholars, I guess, in the Indian context as well, who believe that, the way feminism emerged in the Western world cannot be said to be the same for our own country. So there we find it in, emerging in waves or women protesting and asking for their rights. So that way it has not emerged in our own Indian context, but it also doesn't mean that we don't have any history of such feminist activism. So, scholars like Veena Majumdar and all, they have said that feminism in India, again, can be divided into different phases. It goes back to pre-independence times when Mahatma Gandhi mobilized women into the national, freedom struggle by pinpointing their strengths of being a woman, all that. And then the second phase basically started with these different social reformers, and then the last.
I'm not asking for activism. Activism and political and social history, I'm not talking for that. I'm asking you theoretical aspect, or what we call it as a discourse. And anyway, what about your
अनघा जी ने भी चैट बॉक्स में बहुत सारे इस प्रकार के प्रश्न पूछे हैं, अगर एक साथ ही हो जाते तो.
And what about Southeast Asian feminism?
Yeah, definitely. I told you that, almost all countries can be studied separately, because in each and every country we find certain, not certain, but then definitely we find roots of feminist struggle. They have not labeled it as, feminism as we see in the Western context. But then we can't say that, in India we don't find, and Madam is saying, about the Bhakti movement. Definitely feminism is all about, it's not only about going to the streets and sitting there on a dharna and all that, but then yes, bhakti is also a way by which the Bhakti movement also was basically a way by which women protested against what they felt was not right to them. So definitely it's not, I have never believed that feminism is only about legal transformation or political transformation or activism. No, it can be anything. It can be anything, but then what will be that thing, that will be decided by the people who are victims of such patriarchal customs or traditions or patriarchal ideologies. So that those women or those people will have to choose what way they want to make use of to achieve the general goal of gender equality. So it's not only about legal and political activism. I tried to say that Western context, we find that it all began with women demanding for certain legal and political rights.
Thank you, ma'am.
राजश्री, आप कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं?
Hello.
Rajeshri, yeah.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, okay. I want to ask about the economic class. That is classism in first world feminism and second world feminism. What about the economic class, economic category like high income, middle income, rich class? Is there any classification as such?
I'm not able to get you, madam. Can you please repeat?
What about the economic class of women in feminism? That is their economic condition, yeah.
Yeah, in the Western context, what I have understood is that right from the beginning there is this discussion, there is this talk about not including the working class women. So when we talk of white Western feminism, it is basically the elite, educated, middle to high class women. So they also did not take into account the issues of their own working women counterparts. So they just talked about their own issues, and their basic issues were, not having an occupation, not having the right to job, not having certain legal and political rights. So what Betty Friedan said way back in 1963 in her book called The Feminine Mystic, that the problem that has no name. So when she was saying that, she was basically talking about the problems, or the so-called problems of these elite women. So definitely there is this divide. So Western feminists have been countered by their own working class women counterparts, that you are not including our issues, which are particular to the working class in America. So it's not that class divides are not there; it is very much there. But then this is where the critiques have come against the white Western first world feminist philosophy or feminists.
Okay, thank you.
I guess now we are approaching our conclusion, and If anyone has question, we can take just one question. Ashita ji, Manisha ji ne pucha hai, could you please repeat the name of the film you mentioned, I think regarding the motherhood? Yeah.
I have texted.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So anyone, any question, suggestion? Otherwise, we'll conclude. So thank you very much, Ashita ji, for such a wonderful, extensively studied and thoroughly detailed lecture on this third world feminism. And we were really enjoying it. And I'm sure in future, we will also stay connected. And thank you very much taking out time from your son for us. And I'm sure your son will be proud son for you. And thank you, Baba Saheb Ambedkar University of Social Sciences. Thank you, Heritage Society. Thank you, all the participants and Bharatiya Shakti team for continuing such a wonderful discourse on Indian feminism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashita ji.
Thank you, everyone. Shall I leave then?
Yes, you can. Thank you very much, Ashita.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Jyoti ji,
boliye.
I want to make one announcement. I have posted on our group that tomorrow the session is on assignment. So 5 to 6 we will show 2 short films and there will be a small test on those films. MCQ type questions will be asked, and 6 to 7 will be open forum, that is open discussion on various aspects. So it is just a gentle reminder, and I request all our participants to go through this unit. You must have got recordings for earlier week. I know that last week recording is not available, but they will try to post it by tomorrow. And films are quite approachable and open, so we can watch the films and appear for the test and discuss on the various issues which are there in the film. Tomorrow we have a resource person, Miss Rupali Petkar Joshi, and we will meet tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So thank you.
Thank you, Prachi ji. Thank you for update. Yes, we'll keep you updated on the group also, and see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. sharp. Thank you.